where you can ask some questions. I'll unmute everyone. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can feel free to type them in the question box. And now I'll hand it over to Gary.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Gary Gilger, for those of you who don't know me. I head up our VIVE energy business for Thea and Schoen. So today I just want to go over just some quick basic VIVE overview, really from, just a really basic view. So if you don't really know what VIVE is or you're curious and want to get to know a little more, this is the perfect webinar for you. Firstly, I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy, and will continue to do so. So can't be said enough. All right, so getting started. So VIVE is really just your basic, affordable, easily retrofittable or new construction code compliant lighting control solution. It's very simple to understand, design, and more importantly, to implement and install in the field where there's significant savings to be done. So what I'll do is I'm going to go over some of the basic features and functions, and then talk about some sort of basic typical designs. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to chime in and type it in, and I'll address them either during presentation or after. All right. So first thing we start with VIVE is we start with a load controller. Load controller is just basically a dimmer or a switch. Okay, just like you would in any conventional commercial or residential building, you have a dimmer switch controlling any light load. So VIVE is the same thing. Okay, and there's two main dimmers and switches. The first one, and most common, is your wall box. Excuse me. Is your wall box device. Okay, so this comes as dimmers or switches for different load types. For neutral, no neutrals, 120, 277. So just like any other application where you're controlling lights, this doesn't change any of that. You still have to pick the correct load controller for your load. All right, so if you have a switch in the wall and you want to replace it with a switch in the wall, you would use one of our switches, okay? These, if you're familiar with Lutron products, these are all the Maestro look. So they have, the LEDs here up on the side, tell you the light levels, or one LED for a switch, and it operates the same way as a Maestro, and it wires the same way as any regular Maestro switch or dimmer. So it should be comfortable for those people that are, used to wall box controls, okay? The only difference between this and a standard wall box Lutron control or any other control is this has wireless capability. So the wireless capability is what allows VIVE to be a system. It communicates to all the wireless peripheral devices such as sensors and daylight sensors, wireless keypads, and a hub, which we'll touch upon later. So that creates an ecosystem of controls where you can manage and control and code compliant, basically for New York, New Jersey, or any part that you're in, okay? So this is your basic switch. We'll talk about more how to program and talk about that. Just so you know, this is the demo mode. So this represents the light in the space. We'll use that later to show you how to do some basic programming with the system, okay? Moving up one step, the other most common these days in commercial applications is what we call a POW pack. So a POW pack is basically a remote mounted switch, okay? I have a loose sample here just to show you. It's an older version, but just to give you an idea what it looks like. So this gets mounted up in a space, either in a J box or in a fixture or somewhere, not a wall box location. It's remote mounted. So what this allows you to do is eliminate that wall switch, that wired wall switch if you don't need one. And also, most importantly, for those that do a lot of commercial, 0 to 10 has become almost a standard for commercial lighting. So instead of having to run additional wires for 0 to 10 to a wall box, now we can do it remotely without running all that additional control wire back to a wall box location. So this will sit up in the ceiling or at a fixture. You terminate your 0 to 10 right to your POW pack, and you interrupt power. And that's it. Now that acts as your dimmer and your switch without having home run anything back to a wall box location. So it definitely is more installation friendly, contractor friendly installation for 0 to 10, especially for retrofit, but even for new construction as well, okay? So the POW packs, just like the wall box switches, they also come in different versions. So there's 0 to 10 is the most common, but there's also contact closures, and there's also switching just for general purpose switching. So there's different for different applications. And they all work the same. Again, these all have the same wireless capability as our wall box sensor, wall box switch as well, to talk to all the peripheral devices, which we'll get to in a few minutes as well. All right, so that's our PAL pack, and then this is our wall box, and this is shown connected to a box just for sample purposes. Again, this is connected to a light to demonstrate how that would operate. Okay, so just to clarify, it's one or the other. Okay, it's just like a wall switch. You have either this wall switch or you have this one that's remote mounted. We don't use them in conjunction with each other, just one or the other. Okay, every single switch leg, every load, every light that you want to switch independently requires a load controller. These are the two most common. There are some others, including in fixture, which I'll talk about at the end. I'll mention and I'll show you. Okay, so once we have actual device controlling the load in your room, okay, then we have to say, well, what do we need for that room? What is the purpose of wireless? Well, most part, occupancy sensing or vacancy sensing is going to be required. All right, that's where VIVE really comes into play with the wireless. So this is our occupancy or vacancy sensor. Okay, so it's relatively small. This will do occupancy or vacancy depending on the application. They are wireless, they're battery operated, and it's a 10-year battery. On all the wireless products I talk about today will be 10-year battery. Okay, replaceable batteries, very simple. So this is a ceiling mount version, 360-degree view, easily mounts. In most commercial applications, you probably have a drop ceiling, so it ships with this pin with the pre-drilled holes. And then you push it through your ceiling, and then you just twist it. So that's really, really simple, easy installation, no running wires, no power packs, not power packs, power packs. Those are power supplies, not to be confused, and no wire. So it's very simple to manage, okay? So this is one version of the sensor. Again, this is a ceiling mount sensor that mounts up on the ceiling, all right? Another version of our sensor is what we call a wall mount sensor. So this is actually three different versions that mount on the wall. There's what we call a wall, which is a 180-degree field of view. There's a corner version, which is just a 90-degree view. And then the last one is a hallway sensor, which is only about 8 to 10 feet wide, but 150 feet straight. So it's really nice for this long hallways application that's always seems to be tricky to retrofit sensors into without running a lot of wire or adding a lot of sensors. So those are the three wall mount sensors available, and they come with different mounting brackets for corner or wall. Okay. Both these sensors have the ability to do occupancy or vacancy. You can either order it by default, either occupancy or vacancy, or you can change it in the field if you order the occupancy sensor version. You can just change it with a series of button presses on the back and change it to vacancy. It's important to know because in New York City, a lot of applications require vacancy due to the local energy codes. So just be aware of that, what you ordered, okay? So moving on from the box sensors. So now that we have our sensors in place, occupancy sensors, now we want to add what we call a daylight sensor. So daylight sensor, for those that don't know, is just simply a sensor that reads the ambient light coming in through the space, through your windows, compares it to the light in the space or at a specific task, and it will adjust the light by dimming accordingly to a specified light level that you would set. So for example, if you want 20 foot candles at a specific area, you would program that when you install this, and then throughout the day, the sensor would read the light levels and adjust the lights, communicating wirelessly back to your load controllers to adjust the lights to a specified light level. Generally, this does require dimming, not switching. Daylight switching generally is not accepted for energy code compliance for daylight harvesting, so you do require dimming to properly do this, okay? Again, just like the sensors, this is battery operated, as you can see here. It's a little different battery, but it's still replaceable battery and it's still 10-year battery life. And it's a very small footprint, as you can see, about the size of a $50 or so. So very, very easy to retrofit in any application, commercial or potentially some light residential. Okay, so the other key part to the system is what we call Pecos, okay? Pecos come in different versions and different mounting options. So all the Pecos are loose, they come loose, so this happens to be a 2-button, as you can see, there's an on-off. Then there's a 3-button with a raise and lower and a favorite scene, as you can see here. And this is a 4-button Pico with 4 different actions, and there's different versions of the 4-button Pico that you can select from, okay? And different mounting options. So obviously one is just a handheld, it's handheld remote, very easy to use. The other one is most common in commercial spaces, is our wall box mount. So there's this, it's plastic clear, it's a special wall box mount in the existing wall box location. And then you mount, and you have a standard Decora wall plate over it. And then if you can see from there, you mount it right to a wall, and then you have a keypad without running any wires, without any back box or anything. 10-year battery life, and very flexible, especially in new modern buildings with glass walls and stuff and partitions. You can mount this on glass versus a conventional wire to be very, wire to run, which make it very difficult. So very flexible, and then of course you also have a pedestal mount. All right, it's a little weighted mount, and you can have up to 4 Picos on one mount. They make wider mounts. And it just simply slides on. You put it on your conference room table or nightstand or wherever else you may have it, and then you have full control of your lights, and you can program them to control any of the load controllers that are on the system. So very flexible, very easy to use. So we're going to do an example now of one room, and we're going to program, manual programming, how simple this is to implement into any building. So I'm just going to use standard wall box switch, or this happens to be a dimmer. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to turn off the light so you can actually see the programming sequence on the LEDs, because it's hard to see with the light. So give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to show demo programming. Hopefully everyone can see all the LEDs and flashing. So the first thing you want to do to program anything is you want to set your load controller into programming mode. Basically to say, okay, what do you want me to talk to? So the way to do that is you hold down the button about 5 seconds, 5 or 6 seconds, and then you'll see all the LEDs will start to flash, okay? So all the LEDs are flashing. It's basically telling you, I'm in programming mode. What do you want me to listen to? Okay, so the first thing I want to start with is my ceiling mounted occupancy sensor, right? So I'm going to take a ceiling mounted occupancy sensor. I'm going to hit, there's a button here with a picture of a light bulb. I'm going to hold this down for about 6 seconds. I'm going to move this back just a little so you can see the light. This represents the light in the space, and you will see that light flash up and down, and the red light here, confirming that they are now communicating. Once it stops, then we know it's done, and now I can turn off the lights and turn on a light. They are communicating, as you can see, and that's it. That's the extent of programming an aux sensor to a switch or dimmer. Really, really simple, and this is manual programming. Obviously, there's more advanced program options, which I'll touch upon at the end of this session. Okay, now, moving on. Now I want to add, let's say there's another door on the other side of this conference room, okay? And there's no current control. So I'd like to add another point of control in that room. So again, we go back into programming mode. And we'll wait for, there we go. So now we're back into programming mode. I'm gonna select this 3-button dimming Pico. Okay, I'm just gonna push the bottom button here for about 6 seconds. And again, you'll see the light in the space will flash on and off a couple times, and the LEDs will cycle. And now you know you are, when it's complete, I can now test it. So here I'm turning it off and back on. Okay, and then of course you can adjust the light level as well by clicking on the raise and lower. Okay, that's it. So 90% of spaces, this is really what you require. A load controller, potential additional control point, and an occupancy sensor. Okay, and that took all of maybe 30 seconds to program and maybe a few more minutes to install by a contractor or maintenance person. Okay, other things we can add. So we have additional sensors. When we talk about wall sensors. So the beauty of the system is I can actually add multiple sensors to one switch or dimmer. I can mix and match. So I may potentially, depending on the size of the room or the layout of the room, I may need a ceiling sensor and a corner sensor and a wall sensor, or 2 corners and a wall. And we can do that, and we can program them all to the same load controller. Same sequence I just showed, press and hold, and you press and hold, and you keep going until all the devices you have are programmed to the system, okay? So different options. Then also we have a daylight sensor, okay? Same concept, press and hold, press and hold. We don't need to keep demonstrating it, but the theory is the same. You just keep press and hold until everything's programmed. The only difference with this daylight sensor, it does require one additional step in order to program it properly, because you do have to set a light level in the space. So after you associate it with the proper control point, then you would manually set a light level in your space to whatever levels you're comfortable with. You'd press a button here and it would calibrate itself to that light level, okay? And that takes another 30 seconds to a minute or so. Other than that, there's no other programming required, excuse me, for the daylight sensor, okay? Additional Pecos and so on and so forth, okay? With the PAL pack, it's the exact same concept, except instead of pushing, what you would consider a paddle, there's a button right on here that you would just push and hold for 6 seconds. The LED would blink, put it in programming mode, and then you continue programming each individual one manually, one at a time, okay? So for small jobs, it's ideal, it's easy to do manual programming. It's a fairly easy and effective process to do that. Larger projects can get a little cumbersome, but we have options that program larger jobs that may make things easier to handle. So the other thing I want to talk, I'm going to talk to you about a couple other accessories. Again, I don't want to get too technical. This is a very basic introduction to VIVE, but I do want to introduce you to some other products that are available with VIVE that add some nice function and features to the system. So the first thing I want to add is a fairly new product. So now we have VIVE has controlled receptacles. So now you can replace your receptacles, and now you can have an aux sensor communicate to your receptacle, or manual control of a Pico control your receptacle. So it's really easy. Some of those states that do require code compliant for receptacles to be turned on and off, this is an easy way to implement that through the existing system that you already have, okay? So again, there's a button here, there's a button here. You can sync them together and they will talk, or you program them through what I call a hub, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about, okay? All right, so all these basic components stay the same, and then you have the option of what's called a hub, okay? So a hub, for the basic part, is just basically a system of brains of the system that allows all these individual parts and pieces to communicate on the network, on the lighting network itself. And what this adds, it adds a couple things. One, the ability to program remotely, meaning you can be on your iPhone, your iPad, your computer. It's web-based programming. It's not an app, so anything with a web browser you can access and program and control and monitor your system from, which makes it really easy. You know, it's easy when you have 1 or 2 devices of these, but if you may have 50 or 100 or more, it's a little cumbersome to go room by room and program them. So a hub makes things easier. It centralizes everything onto your web browser to do the programming and control. Other features of the hub, this gives you the astronomic time clock. So you can set time clock settings for any single individual load controller independently of each other. This also has load shedding. Load shedding is important. It's becoming more and more common in most municipalities and states around the country. Basically gives you the ability to shed your load, reduce your lighting load at any given point with the touch of a button that you set, and you can individually program each zone independently. One of the more advanced features it has is BMS interface. So if you have a BMS system that you want to interface to, this will allow you to do that through BACnet. Okay, again, more advanced features, which we'll talk about another time, but just so you know some of the features it has. It also has a lot more programming options, more advanced programming options. Things such as you can set time clock modes to ignore occupancy sensing during certain hours. You could adjust daylighting through here without manually doing it, high and low end trims, and so on and so forth. There's a lot more advanced functions that this has. And the beauty of this, because it's mostly software based, there's always upgrades available and new features being added. So it's a really cool product to have, and eventually to add more function and product features as a business needs it or requires it. Okay, so a couple of things about the hub. It is surface mounted. Well, this one is surface mounted. You can see it's flush. They also, I'm sorry, this is a flush mount. They do make a surface mount version, which does stick out a little bit, make it sticks on the surface. It does come with its own power supply. It's 120 or 277. For the most part, this is really the only product in the VIVE system that you would need to provide power to that wouldn't normally be already done. All the load controllers typically already going to have power because those are your switch legs. So this is really the only product that you need to wire, potentially run new wire for to power up. All right, so keep that in mind. That's why it's such a simple and easy installation of the VIVE system. Last thing I want to mention, this is a newer product, but it's gaining a lot of traction, especially in the lighting world. So now VIVE, this is a load controller. The difference with this is now this is provided by the fixture manufacturer. This is an in-fixture load controller, and this has occupancy sensing and daylight sensing built right into the fixture, as you can see here. So you can order this. Most major fixture manufacturers will offer a VIVE option. So you literally just order the fixture, you hang the fixtures. You don't care about zoning because now everything is programmable. All the zoning is programmable. All you need to provide on the job now are Pecos, right? Manual on-offs and hubs throughout the space to have everything communicate properly, okay? So there's no more guesswork about compatible load controllers or anything like that. You just wire fixtures hot, and then all the zoning is done digitally. So it's a really, really cost-efficient way to design and install a lighting control system and to meet all the energy codes that are required, because this will definitely do that, okay? So a couple of things I want to just quickly note about. Some of our different technical differences. So for all Lutron sensors, we use a technology called XCT. Again, not to get too technical, this is basically a somewhat proprietary sensing technology that really picks up fine movement much better than your typical sensors do, which is really important because, you know, sensors is one of those things that can really aggravate users if they go off prematurely. So we have really, really advanced sensing technology in all our wireless sensors. That's important to know. Couple of the technical, basic technical differences or points that you should know is distances. So sensors need to be within 60 feet of the load controllers, okay, in an open space, or 30 feet through general construction. Let me just turn this off because I see the glare. Okay, so within 30 or 60 foot rule is general, is typical wireless rule. So any load controllers should be within 30 or 60 foot of the sensors, Pecos. This is another daylight sensor. So any of the peripheral devices should be within that range of the load controllers, okay? Hubs do have the ability to extend some of that range. So just be aware of that if you have a situation where you may need to go further than 30, 60 feet, hubs may be able to assist in that. So you can reach out to us and we can help you with that, right? As far as system limitations on the hub, so there's 3 different versions of the hub. The basic version will do 75 devices, and then the top version will do up to 700 devices. So depending on the size of your project, we can help you decide which hub you need, and also there's other factors that go into place when deciding on how to lay out hubs, and we can help you with that. We have a full design team that can help, and fortunately site visits right now are on hold, but hopefully sometime in the near future we can definitely make that happen again, okay? So I'm going to open it up to questions. If anyone has any questions, please feel free.